Hey guys, how you doing? Today is our last day here together, but don't worry, towards the end, I'm going to tell you how we are going to continue to stay connected well past our just 4 webinars together. Okay, so I see there are some of us coming. As always, we have our stragglers that they're gonna be coming a little later, so we give them a courtesy of about a 3-minute wait. Renee likes to wait for 5 minutes, but I have a lot of good stuff to tell you guys today, so I can't possibly wait 5 whole minutes, but I will give them about 3 minutes. If you are already here, Renee's going to send some polls. Remember, this is our final one. This is our 4th part. We've done 3 parts already, and I just want to quiz you guys. I want to see how much you guys remember from parts 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so Renee's going to be sending some questions there for you guys. The first one, the single secret to surviving and thriving in close quarters. Okay, so here it is. Let's see if you guys remember. What is the single secret to surviving and flourishing in close quarters? Is it the first one, fact, faith, feeling? The second one, find the symptom? Or the last one, find the root? What do you guys think? Look at that. Okay. The first one, the first answer there, I'm going to give it a few more seconds for you to answer. Everyone answer, and I'm going to tell you what the correct answer is. So the single secret to surviving and flourishing in close quarters. Remember, this is how to protect your marriage against coronavirus. We are spending a lot of time together. Well, the single secret is to find the root. It was the last one. Find the root. And again, if you need to refresh your memory, or maybe if you weren't able to watch part 1, that will soon be available for you with in a couple days or so. Renee's working on it. Okay, Renee, send the next one. The next one is, what is the single secret to influencing your spouse? The first one, allow yourself to be influenced. The second one, control and manipulate until you get your way. Or the last one, give up, they will never change. That one's easy. Come on. Everyone can answer that one. Very good. The single secret to influencing your spouse is you must also allow to be influenced. Newsflash, your way is not always the right way or the best way or the correct way. You need to give a little. It's the art of compromise. Allow yourself to also be influenced. And finally, the last one here, what is the single secret to disagreeing with love and respect? The first one, just don't communicate. The second one, focus on the content. Or the last one, focus on the process, aka be like Abigail. All right, very good. Yes, we got the majority of the answers correct. Focus on the process, aka be like Abigail. So soon those will be made available. We'll try to send an email for all of you who are registered so that you can see it as soon as it's all available. And I recommend that you watch it, maybe rewatch it. All the activities will be there. Print it out, do the activities. Very good. So look, we are at 3:04. For those of you who are joining now, we just had some questions. Don't worry about answering it. And you'll see the correct answers. All the correct answers are the majority of the right answers. So before we're going to get right into it. Today, we are going to be talking about the single secret to rebuilding trust. Okay, the single secret to rebuilding trust. And the reason why we are going to be talking about rebuilding trust is because this week I got a question. And the question, amongst the other questions, I kind of summarized all of them, and I got this question. And it is how to forgive, move on, and trust after a big fight or betrayal. So some people asked for forgiveness, some people said the word moving on, some people said the word trust. And as you can see, these words are kind of synonymous. Forgiving, moving on, and trusting are things that need to be present in order for you to continue in an abundant relationship. So that's what we're going to be discussing here today, the single secret. Now, before we continue, let us define some words. When I say trust, Webster Dictionary gives me this definition: a firm reliance on character, reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. We are going to focus on the someone, not the something, because again, I'm talking about you and your husband, okay? Your husband and your wife. And what does betrayal mean? When I use betrayal, what do I mean by betrayal? When I say betrayal, I mean a violation of the above definition of someone's trust or confidence. Now, the reason these go hand in hand is, well, studies show that a relationship needs trust in order to flourish. That being said, betrayal is what gets us in trouble and is what ruins or decays our ability to trust each other. Now, here's the thing: all of us, with no exception, me, Renee, you guys, everyone, at one point or another has betrayed their spouse. Now, before you say, no, 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 Amanda, maybe you have, maybe Renee has, but I'm telling you right now, I have never betrayed my spouse. Remember, betrayal is a violation of a person's trust or confidence. Now, when I use the word betrayal, usually people get all riled up because they automatically think, I didn't cheat on anyone, right? I didn't commit adultery. That's one of the 10 Commandments. I'd never do that. Well, there are other subtle ways that you can betray your spouse. And so Renee's going to add the little activity I have there for. It's not really an activity. It's just going to show you the points. And here, John Gottman, he lists 12 ways that you have betrayed. I'm using the word have because I know this has already happened, that you have betrayed your spouse. And we're going to quickly go through this list. They're pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to go over it with you, and then you can keep this for your notes. And later, I want you, there's a verse that Renee and I were memorizing with a group that we're doing the 911 marriage with. And one of the verses we're memorizing is, search my heart, O God, and know me. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me to the way everlasting. So I want you to get this checklist during the week, and I want you to say, God, search my heart, try me, test me, see if there is anything in me that you say, hey, this is a way that you're betraying your spouse. So let's go through them quickly. The first one you have there is betrayals by violations of commitment. Now, when you betray your spouse in this way, instead of your commitment being unconditional, it becomes very conditional. It's almost like some part of you is just waiting around for someone better to come along. You're always looking over the neighbor's grass thinking, oh man, the grass truly is greener on the other side. This is a form of betrayal. Why? Because instead of you focusing on the positive things of your spouse, you are constantly focusing on the negative things of your spouse. And we know the Bible is clear that unthankfulness or ingratitude is actually a sin. Number 2, betrayals of emotional or romantic or sexual exclusivity. These are the flirtations or the secret emotional attachments. It seems like it's becoming quite common for there to be emotional cheating going on between spouses. And as I had some couples say, they say, Amanda, come on, is emotional cheating really all that cheating? It's not physical. Emotional cheating acts very much like marijuana. At times, it can be the gateway drug. And if emotional cheating has not resulted in physical cheating, it's pretty darn close. Okay. And I just, giving you a little extra information, I just wanted to put there 5 points, 5 bullet points that are signs your partner's friendship is not an innocent friendship. And, read this on your own, pray about it, find a therapist, so that you can figure this one out. So what is it? Has the friendship been hidden? Are your questions about friendship responded with don't worry or discouragement? Have you asked it to end only to have your partner kind of like push back on it? Have your boundaries been disrespected? Is the friend the subject of fantasies or comments during troubled times in a relationship? Oh man, I'll have couples and they'll come and they'll be like, "Oh, if only you were more like Dan." Or if only you were more like Anne, And so whenever we bring other people into our relationship during an argument, a disagreement, during troubled times. So that's for you to see later. Let's continue here. Betrayals by secrets, lies, and deceptions. And by that, I will say, no deviation of strict integrity is pleasing to God. There is no such thing as white lies or little lies, or those are lies and they are betrayals in your relationship. Now, I actually did a video. I'm going to put it here. I hadn't told Renee to put it, but I will put it. I actually did a video. I just sent it to you guys there, where I talk specifically about, if I'm not wrong, I talk specifically about betrayals of violation of commitment, the first three, more in depth in this YouTube video. So if you want to watch that, go ahead and do that. The next one was coalitions with others against your partner. Guys, Genesis says, leave, cleave, and become one flesh. That word leave means go, get away, like go from your home. You are starting a new family. Coalitions against your partner is oftentimes when the wife or the husband, they go back to mommy and daddy to talk bad about their spouse, to side against their spouse. Whether you're doing that with friends or coworkers, when you are talking negatively about your spouse behind their back, that is a form of betrayal. Okay, the Bible is also clear on that. You go directly to the person and you guys try to find agreement. Do not badmouth your spouse to anyone. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Okay, the next one, or in therapy, or directly to your spouse. The fifth one, betrayals by disinterest. This is when you become very detached from your spouse's thoughts or feelings. Now, I'm not saying that all of your spouse's feelings will be correct, but we need to have a sensitivity and saying, hey, let me hear you out. Your thinking is different than my thinking, but giving the person, the time of day, so that we can come up with a solution or an agreement, etc. The sixth one, betrayals by unfairness and lack of care. Boys, husbands, a lot of women are complaining about this one. This is resources, times, and responsibilities that are not being shared equally. Right now in 2020, a lot of husbands work, a lot of wives work, and they also need to come home and take care of the house together. But sometimes it seems very one sided, where the wife is working, she's taking care of the home, she's cooking, she's taking care of the kids. Betrayals of unfairness and lack of care is when one person is doing way more than the other person, when really you're supposed to be a team. As I say these, are you thinking, oh boy, you're right, I have betrayed my spouse? Because when I went through this list, I thought, oh man, I'm sorry, Renee, I betrayed you in tons of ways, right? Number 7, betrayals of affection, coldness or unresponsiveness. Remember last week, think about stonewalling. Think about walking into a discussion or a disagreement on the horse, stonewalling. 8, betrayals by lack of sexual interest. Ignoring your spouses. This is ignoring their need for sexual intimacy or closeness or touch, being cold and distant and detached. Number 9, betrayals by abuse. Betrayals by abuse, is a serious one. And again, all of these, here's the thing. You might think, oh man, is it a really big deal? Sure, it happens in all these relationships. We want to make sure that you are not setting your marriage to a trajectory that can lead to divorce. If I ask you right now, hey, do you feel like divorcing your spouse? You might say, we argue all the time and our marriage is pretty mediocre, but I think I'm going to stick around. Here's the thing. We can only stick around with mediocre marriages for so long. After a time, we start to lead this plane that is our marriage in a trajectory that will conclude, the final destination will be divorce. So now is the time to look at this list and think, in what way am I betraying my spouse? In what way am I decreasing trust? Because if trust is a foundation of an abundant marriage, I want to remove any form of betrayal so that trust remains in a strong point in my marriage. So abuse would be sexual denigration, extreme jealousy, humiliation, belittling, damaging of a person's body or a person's property, these are all ways of abuse. Three more here. Betrayals by disrespect. We talked a lot about disrespect in last part three, I believe, when we talked about disagreeing with love and respect. So think contempt. Remember, we talked about contempt. That's the sarcasm, the ridicule, the mocking, the rolling of the eyes, imitating. 11, betrayal by not meeting each other's need. When you and I got married, we promised several things to our spouse. I don't know if you said the traditional vows. Renee and I, well, I decided Renee didn't want to, but I said, please. Um, and so I allowed myself to be influenced. And so I was able to influence him, and he wrote his own vows. And we promised a whole lot of stuff to each other. And in the altar, regardless of what you promised, I know you promised that you would be there for each other in good times and bad, and sickness and health, if you're rich or if you're poor. And 11 is a betrayal of those vows. When you are not being present, when you are not being open or emotionally available and responsive to your partner, you are not fulfilling the vow that you made on your wedding day. And finally, betrayals by breaking sacred promises and vows, and I will add, and your covenantal promise, which we will see what that is all about in just a few minutes here. So now, remember, the question is how to forgive, move on, and trust after a big fight or a betrayal. So keep that worksheet, go through the betrayals so you can find out how you're betraying, so that this is the first step. You need to find out how you're betraying so that trust can, right, be reproduced in your relationship. Now, trust, as you have seen through this list, is made and broken in small, medium, and large moments. And the seemingly meaningless small interactions throughout your day that you have with your partner, right? Like, oh, it's when I said, hey, Renee, do you think you could wash the dishes for me so that I can sleep a little early? I woke up early with River and Reed, and he says, no, I can't. You figure it out on your own. That is a form of betrayal. Remember, that's the form of betrayal by number 6. Betrayals by unfairness and lack of care. So even if it's in such a small way, what happens is these moments are either building or breaking down your trust that you have in your relationship. I want you to think like this. Whenever you interact with each other, the thought process is, does this person have my back? Is this person going to be there for me? And the more and more you betray your spouse, the more and more the answer becomes, no, they will not. Because if I can't even count on them in small things, what makes me think that I'm going to be able to count on them when big things shows up? And now research shows that trust and betrayal are the key ingredients to the success or the failure of your relationship. So, if trust and betrayal are these key ingredients that I'm telling you that John Gottman has seen in his research, what is then the single secret to rebuilding your trust? Okay, Amanda, my trust has been broken. We fought. There were forms of betrayal, some the ones that you've listed and more, right? Maybe there already has been physical betrayal. Now, if I want to forgive, if I want to move on, how do I do that? How do I rebuild trust? So, this is how you're going to do it. You ready? Let me take a sip of water. Okay. C.S. Lewis, love him, great Christian apologetic, and he wrote a book called The Four Loves. And in this book, he describes 4 types of love. And I'm sure you're probably familiar with at least one, if not all, of these types of love. I'm going to go through the first 2 rather quickly, and we're going to spend the bulk of our time on the last one because this is where we find the single secret. Now, the first one is affection or storge. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. If you know how to pronounce it correctly, awesome. I don't. But we're going to use the word affection for it. Now, this form of love covers an array of loves. This love can also be seen, we have ducks here, and we see the mama ducks whenever she's caring for her little baby ducks. That is a picture of affection. That is a picture of storge. Okay, this type of love, it relies on what is expected and what is familiar. think about it like this. You were born into a family that you are familiar with. I'm pretty comfortable with my mother, my father, and my brother. I'm also pretty comfortable with Renee and even his family. I'm also pretty comfortable with my church family and even in my community here with my neighbors. Now, these are people almost whom you were thrown into together in a familial sort of setting. Now, the affection you have towards these people are there. Why? Because you're brushing shoulders with each other. You're interacting with each other in the normal day to day of life. And the majority of the love we experience, even if we don't label it as love, happens in these types of interaction. Okay. So, familial, church, community, your school, your workplace, people who you spend most of your time with. That's the first one. The second one is the romantic or the eros. This is where we get the word erotica, right? And this is when, people are passionately in love with each other. I have teenage clients and they'll say, "Oh, I stayed up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning talking to my boyfriend or my girlfriend." These are lovers. They are so absorbed in each other and with each other. But the danger of this romantic love is because at times it can be blind. And everyone says, love is blind. If we're talking physical appearance, maybe, but love should not be blind. If one thing shouldn't be blind, it is love. We need to make sure we know what we're getting ourselves into. But during this romantic type of love, we feel so much passion and lust and excitement that when our relationship starts to mature and maybe some of the passion dies out, we think, well, we don't love each other anymore. And we know that that is not true. Now, I'm going to confess something here to you guys, and Renee is right here with me, but, you know, I don't get butterflies in my stomach every time I see him because I spend every day with him now. I'm not saying I never get butterflies. When he puts on a really nice, tight suit, Saturday morning to go to church, I'm like, man, that is a good looking husband that I have, right? When I see him working on the lawn without his shirt, I get butterflies in my stomach. Now, if I don't have these butterflies in my stomach, it doesn't mean that no longer love exists in our relationship. No, 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 no. Mature love, are there moments of passion? Absolutely. But it's not to say that if these moments aren't every single day, all the time, 24/7, that we don't love each other. The next one, number 3, it would call it a friendship. C.S. Lewis calls it the friendship or the filio. We see this word in the Bible. And this type of love is the most time consuming. It's the least celebrated. And it's the one that we think, we could live without this one. But we cannot live without it. C.S. Lewis says that few value it because few experience what it means to have a good friendship, what it means to have a good relationship with a friend. Now, this love is produced when we have similar interests, when we have similar insights or vision or purpose or passions or dreams, etc. Now, here's the catch. Unlike the first 2 types of love, we choose to have a friendship or a filial type of love. So keep that word in mind, that word choose. And finally, the last one where we will spend the majority of our time, it's the agape, right? And you've most likely heard this word. You can also call it the charity or the agape love. This here is our chief aim. This is our focus. In here, you will find lies the single secret to rebuilding your trust. Agape. Now, this is the unconditional love that God has given us through his son, Jesus. And this is what we're celebrating this weekend, right? Yesterday was Good Friday. Today, Jesus, not specifically today, right? The 11th. But on a Saturday, Jesus was in a tomb. And tomorrow, praise God, he's going to resurrect. This is what we celebrate. And this is where we see agape love most fulfilled. Now, I want to read this quote from C.S. Lewis. And I want you to listen closely. I'm going to read it a little slower. When I get excited, I start to speak a little fast. But I want you to hear this out. I have a lot of people who, when they come to session, when they have experienced betrayal, if you've experienced betrayal, you know that it hurts. It rips your heart in pieces. When you experience betrayal, you think, I will never be able to forgive this person. I will never be able to move on. How can I possibly trust this person again? These are all things that I've heard countless time with my clients. And some of them will go as long as saying, you know what? I'm just going to get divorced, Amanda, and I will never love again. I don't want to put myself in that position any longer because it's just too painful. Maybe you feel like that right now. Now, C.S. Lewis commenting on agape love, it's almost like he knew that this was the experience that people have. He says this: when it comes to love, agape love, there is no safe investment. He says to love at all is to be vulnerable. Remember, one of the forms of betrayal, when you're not vulnerable, you're actually betraying your spouse because you committed that you were going to have vulnerability in your relationship. He goes, love anything, and your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly be broken. Then he goes, if you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even an animal. And I'm going to press pause and tell you, my mom, when we were living in an old house, she had a little Yorkie Terrier teacup, and she loved. Renee says we can't call it a dog, but it was a dog. It was this big. It was a Yorkie Terrier teacup, and she would just prance around with this little thing, right? And it was just her friend. It was her buddy. She loved it. She would sneak him sometimes to sleep in the bed with her without my dad knowing. And sure enough, one day my nephew came to visit. I have a stepsister who lives in Brazil, and her son came to visit, and he was here, and he's really really tall. And accidentally, while he was holding the dog fell on the floor. Right now, everyone's gasping. The dog fell on the floor, and he calls me, and my first question is, "Did you already call my mom?" And he's like, "Yeah, I called her." I said, "Oh." So I U-turn. I come back around, and I get this dog, and I'm like, oh man, my mom's already sitting there on the sofa. She's already crying. And my neighbor was a firefighter, and I just wanted to make sure, right? I wanted to check. So I grabbed, his name was Rusty. I grab Rusty, I take him to the neighbor's house, and I say, can you just confirm that this dog is no longer alive? And he goes, well, if it brings you any solace, it seems like he broke its neck, so he didn't suffer. And so, my mom heard that, and she was just so upset. She just cried and cried, and for weeks and weeks, she was so upset. And she said this: Amanda, I will never again get a dog because I don't want to hurt myself anymore. Right? This is literally what C.S. Lewis is saying. He goes, to love, here it goes, da, da, da. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, it being your heart, you must give your heart to no one, not even to an animal, because even animals, when they die, we suffer. It just breaks our heart. He goes, wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements, he says. Lock it up in a safe or a coffin of your selfishness. He goes, put it in a casket, a place that is safe, dark, motionless, airless. He goes, it will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable, he says. So this is what you got to do. If you don't want to get hurt, put it in a coffin. But then he says this: the alternative to this tragedy, he's saying, listen, this would be a very tragic way of living. But he goes, the alternative to this tragedy, or at least to the risk of tragedy, is damnation. The only place, listen to this line. I shared this with Renee this morning. He goes, man, that was powerful. He goes, the only place outside heaven where you can perfectly, wait, okay, let me read it again. The only place outside heaven where you can be perfectly safe from all dangers of love is hell. Did you catch that? We cannot go to heaven if we do not have the love of Christ inside us. And when we open our hearts and ourselves up to love, we are also opening ourselves up for betrayal, for risk. Isn't that what Jesus risked when he died on the cross? He wasn't sure that everyone was going to accept his gift. Love requires risk. You know why? Because to love requires freedom. And in freedom, we have choice. Now, this love, this agape love, is characterized by unselfishness and giving, even to the point of sacrifice. This is the love that most, remember, resembles the sacrifice or the love of Jesus for us, unselfish, giving even to the point of sacrifice. This is what we would say an unconditional love. And this, my friends, is a choice. No one forced you to get married. You chose to get married. Now, this unconditional agape love can be seen in the following statement. Remember when Jesus, when he was getting baptized, it's in Matthew, and as he's getting baptized, God the Father says to him, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." He uses that word pleased, okay? It's almost like you would say, "And this is my husband, this is my beloved husband, or this is my beloved wife, in whom I am well pleased." Now, God could have said of Jesus, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am proud of." He could have said that. But he didn't use the word proud, he used the word pleased. And here's why. Am I proud of Renee's accomplishments? Sure, I am. And there's nothing wrong with you being proud of your spouse's accomplishment. I'm proud of Renee as a father. I'm proud of him at his work ethics and his discipline. I am proud of my husband. However, it's also important to give them the gift of simply being, meaning that you and we have intrinsic value. For me to say that I am pleased with Renee doesn't imply perfection, but it implies that Renee doesn't have to do anything or change anything for me to say, I take pleasure in you, I love you. This is what agape means. Look at the seriousness of this. When Jesus died on the cross for us, what he was saying is, I love you with an unconditional love. I love you just the way you are, ... because I love you so much, you're not going to stay that way. But I died for sinners, is what Jesus said, correct? He didn't die just for the good people. He died for all of us. Now, herein we start to sort of break down this word agape. And there's a man named Ken Boa, and he says this: herein lies the unconditional nature of agape. He says it lies in the dilemma, the power, and hear this, the pain of marriage. He says the pain of marriage. He says marriage is two people, each making an unconditional covenant of commitment to an imperfect person. That is what agape is all about. I'm going to say it again. Hear me clearly. When you experience agape love in your relationship with your spouse, what you are doing is you are participating in what God did for us on the cross, an unconditional covenant of commitment to an imperfect person. Now, obviously, when we join a relationship with imperfect people, we need to understand that forgiveness will be necessary. Rather, it will be a requirement. Because, hate to break it to you, you will let your spouse down. However, you can still love, agape, each other, because love is a choice. I am proud of Renee, but I also find pleasure in Renee. Renee is my beloved husband in whom I am well pleased. Does this mean that we are going to, if Renee does something hurtful or mean, that we're not going to have a conversation about it? Of course not. But you will see where you and I, in order for us to rebuild trust, in order for us to have an abundant relationship with our spouse, agape love it needs to be present. So here we go. How, Amanda, do I forgive, move on, and trust after a big fight or after betrayal? Agape is the single secret to rebuilding trust. Agape is the answer. Now, that was part one, okay? Remember, I always kind of do this with you guys. Part one closed. Now we're going to go into part two. I need to explain, and I won't have too much time today. In the 911 marriage course, I go into much detail with all of this, but I'm going to explain it to you in this way. God made a covenant with Abraham. Do you remember that? In Genesis 15, he makes a covenant with Abraham. And this covenant was based on agape. How do we know that? Because it was an unconditional covenant of friendship with an imperfect person. Now, it's different than marriage. Why? Because God isn't imperfect, okay? God was perfect. He made a covenant with an imperfect person. And this is why the person who most risks himself when he loves is God. Because God will always be faithful. You and I, we are unfaithful. However, in our marriages, both are imperfect, both will mess up, both will err, and this is why in our marriage, it's between two imperfect people. But when a covenant was made by God, it was between one perfect person and one imperfect person, that being us. Starting with Abraham, but that's me and that's you. Now, what is a covenant, Amanda? A covenant to me is a word stronger than saying commitment or a vow. It's a covenant is something solemn. It's binding. It's a relationship that is meant to last a lifetime, okay? Forever and ever and ever. When God created marriage, he didn't create marriage for it to end. And I also know that when you got married, you weren't thinking, you know what, I'm getting married, but I'm planning on getting a divorce in about 5 or 10 years from now. That's the plan. No one does that. When we get married, we say things like, till death do us part, is something we say. Meaning, the only way I'm getting out of this thing is if I die, right? And I did hear something the other day with this whole coronavirus thing, and the lady was so frustrated because she was quarantined with her husband, and she goes, after this quarantine, someone is gonna die in this quarantine, and she goes, and it won't be me, it's gonna be him, right? And so a relationship is meant to last for a lifetime. A marriage is supposed to be forever. Now, in Isaiah 41:8, after, God makes a covenant with Abraham in Genesis 15, Isaiah, written after, in there, it says something interesting. It says this: But you, Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendant of Abraham, my friend. Okay, my friend. God uses that word. God uses that word in other places as well. We won't have time to go there, to describe his relationship with Abraham. So we know that God makes a covenant with Abraham, and then he calls Abraham my friend. Now, look how amazing this is. The Bible it's so awesome the way that God literally leaves us love letters in the Bible. That word, my friend, in Isaiah 41:8, friend, comes from the Hebrew word ahab, A-H-A-B, which is the verb meaning to love. Okay? Now, the Septuagint translates this word to agape. So look at this. When God calls Abraham his friend, he's saying that him and Abraham have a relationship of agape. And the English word, that's why sometimes we miss these translations when we read our Bible in English. Nonetheless, it does its point, right? It transforms our heart. But the English word is quite different than when you use it in Hebrew. Because for English, when we love, we think emotions and feelings and butterflies. And we also use, I love you to our dogs and to our plants and etc. But here, that Hebrew word is a strong word. It's when you read your Bible, the word that you read, friend or love, not always does it have this agape meaning. As you saw, C.S. Lewis finds 4 different types of definitions of love. But in this specific verse, it's agape. And in the Hebrew, it has less to do with emotions and feelings and desires and butterflies, and it has more to do with actions. Keep this in your mind. So here, love is a choice, love is an action, love is a verb, okay? And I'll give you this example. I had a wife and husband. They started, they were doing the course, 911 marriage course, and they started off because there was emotional cheating that was taking place. And the wife had 2 choices. If you look in the Bible, technically speaking, God says that the only way for divorce is if cheating takes place, right? Adultery. Now, emotional cheating is still considered adultery, okay? Because of all the forms of betrayal listed, you give your heart, your soul, your mind, your affections that belongs to God and to your spouse to another. Now, that being said, the wife had a choice to make. She had a decision to make. She could walk away from her relationship, but she decided that she wanted to fight for her relationship. And she says, Amanda, I don't know that I can rebuild trust. I've been so betrayed. I've been lied to. I feel so just blindsided. The person I thought that I was married to wasn't this person at all. And she goes, Amanda, do you think it's possible to rebuild trust? I say, yeah, I do think it's possible to rebuild trust. I do believe that God can restore your relationship. But in order to rebuild trust, it's going to take time, it's going to take energy, and it's going to take sacrifice. When I use that word, when I use those words, time, energy, and sacrifice, I was really defining to her agape. You are going to need an agape type of love that's not based on feelings, it's not based on desires or your heart, it's based on a principle to love till death do us part. And this is the kind of covenantal relationship that God entered with Abraham. Now, not only was it a covenant, but it was a relationship of friendship. And this is what needs to be found in your relationship. Are you a friend to your spouse? Webster gives so many incredible definitions to what it means to be a friend. Remember, Abraham was a friend of God. In the word agape, under the umbrella of agape, not only was there a covenantal promise of foreverness, but there's also this component of friendship. Now, friendship is someone who is attached to you by affection. To be someone's friend is to be bound with them. To be someone's friend is to know this person. Do you know your spouse? Does your spouse know you? It's sentiments of esteem, of love, and respect. It's, when you want to be in the presence of each other, when you want to promote each other's happiness and prosperity, when you are willing to sacrifice, to take time, and to take energy to reconstruct whatever is broken in your relationship and prevent your relationship from getting to that place. So here, God is addressing Abraham as a friend, and God says that Abraham loved him. And you know why Abraham loved him? Because as God loved Abraham, Abraham loved God. We love him because he first loved us. Remember that? 1 John 4:19? We love him being God, because he first loved us. Their relationship was a mutual love that was immutable, meaning never changing, consistent, reliable, firm. Why? Because of an unconditional covenant. Now, when you are someone's friend, when you are someone's partner, when you are married to someone, if you remember the stories, it said that when God did certain things throughout the history of Israel, Abraham was really one of the first people to know. There's a verse found in Genesis 18 when God, speaking of Abraham, he says, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? He's speaking here of Sodom and Gomorrah. Should I hide of Abraham what I'm about to do? He goes, Abraham is a great nation. He's a mighty nation. He will surely be blessed. But Abraham is my friend. And so I need to reveal to Abraham what I'm about to do. Do you start to see where agape, the reason it's the foundation for rebuilding trust is because in the agape love, no form of betrayal is present. And I'm only going to share one example with you. Because Abraham was a friend of God, because Abraham and God had an agape love together, God revealed what he was going to do with Abraham. There was no secrets between the relationship of Abraham and God. There was no concealing. There was no lying. There was no hiding of the truth. God, the perfect, immutable God, revealed to Abraham all of his plans. Why? Because he said, Abraham is my friend and I have agape love with him. Is that the case in your marriage? Do you have agape in your marriage? Because if you do, then there should be no secrets. There should be no lying. There should be no white lies. Why? Because agape would not allow for it. Are you starting to see why agape is so important? A husband and a wife in their relationship needs to be open, authentic, transparent, real, vulnerable, raw. Why? Because your wife is your friend. Because your husband is your friend. And if even God God revealed to an erring, imperfect human being his plans because they had a covenant and because they were friends, how much more shouldn't we do that with our spouse? Does friendship describe your marriage? Now, we're going to land this plane in a second. I want you to go, if you have it, to Proverbs 17:17. If you have your Bible, go there. Proverbs 17:17. In there, you see a friend loves at all time. A friend, agape, a friend loves at all times. Charles Spurgeon, he's another one I like a lot. When he's commenting on a friend loves at all time, look at the way he defines friendship. And I want, as I read this to you, I want you to think, man, do I have this in my marriage? And if the answer is no, don't worry. Remember, I'm going to give you further steps for you to not only cultivate friendship in your relationship, but also remind you that covenant means immutable, reliable, consistent. It is a choice. Love is a choice. Now, Spurgeon, he says this: a friend loves at all times, right? He's like, I'm going to comment on Proverbs 17:17. He goes, having once given his heart to his chosen companion, he clings to him in all weathers. He says, as soon as you give your heart to another in marriage, that's it. Y'all are stuck together. He goes, in fair weather or in foul weather, he loves the other nonetheless because he becomes poor or because of his fame or because of his eclipse. He says, it doesn't matter what happens. The love doesn't change just because you became poor, right? That's why we say in rich and sickness and in health, and rich or in poor. He goes, when we have a friendship, he continues, it's like a lamp that shines brighter and brighter and brighter, or is made more manifest because of the darkness that surrounds it. Check this out. He's literally saying, when hard times comes into your marriage, that's when your light shines even brighter. The darkness reveals the closeness of your friendship because your friendship is like a lamp that shines bright. Isn't that beautiful? Look at what he says. He goes, true friendship is not fed from the barn floor or the wine vat. He says it doesn't matter. It is not like the rainbow dependent upon the sunshine. It is fixed as a rock and is firm as granite, and smiles superior to wind and tempest. It does not matter the weather. Your friendship, your agape love in your spouse weathers any storm, he says. If we have friendship at all, he says, let this be the form that it takes. Let us be willing to be brought to the test of the wise man and to be tried. And may we not be found wanting. And then he ends it like this, and this is my favorite line in all what he just said. God grant us covenant marriages that testify of the truth to a skeptical world that a friend loves at all times. Are you a friend to your spouse? Are you willing to love at all times? Renee's about to send you another worksheet here. How to forgive, Amanda, how to move on, how to trust. Agape is the secret. It's an unconditional covenant of friendship that you have entered with the imperfect person that is your spouse. That is the single secret. Pray that God would work in you agape love. And that's why it is only possible when we get that love from God. God is love. Remember, he is not loving, but he is the very word, the very essence of the word. So without him, it is impossible to love our spouse with agape. So open there your worksheet. Here is a way. Again, I got some questions, not all questions here that I could possibly give you. This is going to give you an idea. This is going to help you out, but there is more to do. And I titled here, to know and to be known. This is not sufficient, but this would be a good starting point for you guys. There's 12 questions here. We're not going to be able to do it together, but I want you to do it with your spouse. That's the point. You don't need to do it with me. I don't need to know this stuff about you. I need to know this stuff about Renee. So there are 12 questions here that I want you to answer with your spouse. So you answer for your spouse. So imagine me and Renee are doing it together. What are your partner's hobbies? And I would say Renee's hobbies are rock climbing. He likes to hike. He likes to camp. He likes to fish. He's outdoorsy. So I would tell him, and then he'd be like, oh, yeah, you're right. Or, no, you're wrong. Actually, you missed this one. He answers mine. We go back and forth. Okay? If you get some wrong, that's okay. The purpose, the point is so that you guys can start to build friendship. And how do you build friendship? By spending time with each other. When you spend time with each other, you get to know each other. To know and to be known is the greatest gift we can give to each other. And towards the end of that worksheet, I gave you different places for you to follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. I know these 4 webinars, they possibly were not enough. And they were especially not enough if either you are on the brink of divorce or if the trajectory of your marriage leads to divorce. I have a lot of couples who say, oh, I'm not going to get divorced anytime soon. But if you start to see the way they interact, maybe it's not soon, but soon is going to come sooner than they think. And so follow us on these platforms, because you will be receiving weekly content and then daily content. And finally, if you want further help, you can go to our website, www.911mymarriage.com. We're really excited. It's the first time we're sharing it with anyone, right, Ree? We're really excited. And I wanted to share it with you guys. So as we conclude, I want you to go to 1 Corinthians 13. That is a love chapter. We've gone to that chapter before. And there it says a few things. It says this, starting in verse 4. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, meaning love does not store up the memory of any wrong that it received, but rejoices with the truth. Now, all these things seem quite impossible for human beings. I don't know about you, but when I read this, I am overwhelmed because I think, God, this possibly can't be true. For me, how am I going to be able to keep all this? This love is the agape love, right? This is the definition when they are using the word love. It's the word agape here. You can also read it. Have you ever tried to read it like this? Look at verse 4 again and put the word Jesus there. Jesus is patient and kind. Jesus does not envy or boast. Jesus is not arrogant or rude. Jesus does not insist on his own way. He is not irritable or resentful. He does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with all truth. When you make it more personal, when you make it the person of Jesus. And if John 15 is the word of God, and so we know it's true that the Bible says, without me, you can do nothing. If we didn't cling to Jesus, and if he was capable of being the perfect definition and the perfect fulfillment of love, of agape love, that means that he can still work in our lives, that we can love each other with God. If you have been betrayed, it will take time, energy, and sacrifice, but it is possible. Remember the life, the one that I said? Wait, audio is bad. Hold on. How about now? Let's see what he can do here. Oh, how about now? Better? Okay. Okay, awesome. Remember when I said the wife, the one who was emotionally cheated on? Well, guess what? Her relationship was restored. Her relationship is not what it once was. Because she was willing to rebuild, because she was willing to trust in the promises of God, she wasn't willing to trust in her spouse because he was unfaithful. He betrayed her. But you know in who she trusted? She trusted in the agape of God. She trusted in the faithfulness of God. And when she trusted in his love and he recreated that love in her, she was capable then of fulfilling 1 Corinthians 13, even to someone, I will say, who doesn't deserve it. Because guess what? You and I don't deserve it either. But Christ gave it to us anyway. And when we are filled with the love of Christ, we then can be generous to give that love to our spouse. Now, when it comes to verse 7, then it kind of gets crazy because it says love bears all things. And you think, Amanda, bears all things? What does all things mean? All things literally means all things. Love can bear cheating. It can bear emotional cheating and, yes, even physical cheating. Love can bear all things. While divorce is an option if adultery has taken place, divorce is not the only option, because I believe that Jesus can restore all things. Now, of course, do we need therapy? Do we need to change habits? Of course. But if two people are willing, rebuilding trust is possible. Now, look at Spurgeon again. When he says love bears all things, look at what he says. It's so beautiful. He says, I would, my brothers and sisters, that we could all imitate the pearl oyster. Do and the bottom of the sea, the little pearl that covers the pearls, the oyster that covers the pearls, he goes, a hurtful particle intrudes itself in the shell. That's what happens, right? There's the shell just hanging out on its own, and then a particle intrudes in the shell, and it grieves it, it hurts it, it harms it. Now look at what he says. It cannot eject the evil, and what does it do but cover it with precious substance extracted of its own life, by which it turns the intruder into a pearl. Has betrayal intruded into your relationship? Be like a pearl. Cover it. Bear all things. And then look at what happens. Oh, that we would do this, that we would receive the betrayals of our fellow Christians, and I'm going to say of your fellow spouse, with patience, gentleness, long suffering, and forgiveness. And like the pearl, may we breed within us those qualities in the person who did us harm, just like the pearl does. What the pearl did was, when this substance, this enemy, this intruder came upon the pearl, she received it and she transformed it into something beautiful. This is what can happen in your marriage. You can receive betrayal. You've already received it, maybe. Well, now, with agape love, you are going to bear it with this kind of love that is patient, kind, that is not resentful, that is not arrogant, that is not rude. And as you breed it, and as you breed it, and as you care for it, a beautiful pearl will come out of your relationship, will come out of your marriage. So love believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And my prayer is that in your marriage, love, agape love, will never end. That's it. I got it. Look at this. And 3:56 with minutes to spare. I wanted to finish a little earlier for you guys so I could give you opportunity to ask questions. Okay. So if you have any questions, ask me now. Here is the chance. Here is the time. And I will say, you all have my email. Renee's going to put my email there again. You can feel free to continue to send questions my way. So, I had a few questions that I was not able to answer during these 4 lives. However, I still do videos every week, which I can then answer your questions there. Okay? You have all the hands out. You have everything. Use this time right now. What's the website? Okay, put the website there again. It's on the worksheet, but Renee can send it again here. And again, guys, use this time with your spouse, this quarantine. It does not have to be the worst thing in your marriage. For some of my clients, it's been the best thing in their marriage, because it's actually had them stop and reflect and cultivate intimacy in their relationship. So again, research shows that trust and betrayal are the key ingredients to the success or the failure of your relationship. And if trust and betrayal are the key ingredients, what is the secret ingredient to rebuilding trust? Agape love. Agape love has friendship. And so may your love be a love of covenantal friendship with 2 imperfect people, but with a perfect God. All right, so if no questions, I am going to pray. And oh man, I'm gonna miss you guys. I'm gonna miss all of you. We had some people who were pretty steady, who accompanied us throughout this whole journey. But I do not want us to be strangers. Okay, so we will stay together through social media, through emails. I am here with you guys. I have a passion for just relationships, and I just pray that together ours would be relationship that reflects the love of God. And in our marriage, may the glory of God be seen daily. Okay, you could do it. I could do it. Renee's married to me, and he's still with me. So we know all things are possible to those who believe. All right, let's pray. Here we go. Dear Heavenly Father, oh Lord, we finished. It's bittersweet. I'm excited because, they now have resources to better their relationship. But I'm also sad, Lord, because we're not going to be together. However, yes, we are. We're going to be together through social media, through emails. You know, they have access to me whenever they want. And Lord, I know that you are a God who restores. Joel says that you can restore our relationships, you can restore us. And Lord, my prayer is that your glory would be seen in our marriage, and that agape love would be seen in our marriage, and that we would have just a friendship as was described here, a friendship that is not dependent on circumstances, but a friendship that comes from a choice to be with each other, just as our vow said, through good times and bad times. So, Lord, whatever needs to be restored, may you restore that. Help us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, guys. I hope you have a good one. Stay safe, and we'll see you very soon. Here's one of these for you guys.
You ended it.
What do you mean? No, I didn't. We're still here.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, Renee ended. You didn't. I'm still here. Renee's out of here. All right, Renee's gone. I'm gonna go spend some time with him. I'll see you guys later. Bye.